Welcome to Consistency Breeds Growth Radio. I am your host, Justin Romer. Our incredible guest and myself talk about the cutting-edge science and consistency necessary to reach your weight loss, wellness, and performance goals. If you have nutrition goals, we have customized nutrition programs and coaches that tell you how much, when, and what to eat for every single meal. And the best part? You don't need to calculate macros in an app. Ditch the calculators. Want to learn more about our intrinsic diet? Let one of our coaches know you listen to this podcast to get 10% off. Do you own a gym or attend a gym that wants to make some money and throw a top-notch nutrition challenge with a team of certified nutrition coaches? Our team will guide your members through a nutrition challenge customized for your gym. And you'll make money for each member who signs up. If you want more information about working with us one-on-one or in a gym setting, head over to consistencybreedsgrowth.com or email us at consistencybreedsgrowth@gmail.com. We will also put links in the show notes. Enjoy the podcast. What's up, CBG Tribe? It's Justin, your host, here again for another episode of CBG Radio. We're excited to have you on the podcast today. Thanks for listening. We have one thing going on right now on our CBG Facebook page, and there's a lot of free content, including our free macro cheat sheet. If you want this free macro cheat sheet, that essentially tells you how to portion out different foods, so you don't have to calculate your macros perfectly, then you can find our Facebook page and join it. And the way to do that is to go over to www.facebook.com/groups/CBG Nutrition Tribe. So head over that way. There's a big community on there that loves to talk about recipes, some people, their struggles, their successes, and it's a really great group. So we hope you join. Today, we have a really good podcast, and it's just going to be me today talking to you guys about the 10 worst diets to best diets ranked. So I'm essentially go through 10 diets, starting from the worst all the way to the absolute best that I have found through observable results with clients and the overall nutrition weight loss community. Okay, you'll find a trend throughout this. I'll try to point out those patterns, but I want to start with number 10, the worst diet, and then we'll go through. The absolute worst diet is the standard American diet, also known as SAD. The standard American diet came out of essentially an optimization problem. So the standard American diet involves high-calorie foods, fast food, all of these different things, and people eat whenever they want, whenever they're hungry. It doesn't have really any structure to it and has the ultimate amount of flexibility. Essentially, you can eat whatever you want, right? So you can imagine how this is a problem. There's no flexibility at all. There's no tracking at all. So the optimization problem that the standard American diet actually solved is, one, how do we get food fast? So the time, one, to prepare it. Okay, so this is for the producer. And then, can we get the food fast in terms of the consumer? So how fast can we, I'm hungry, and within a matter of minutes, start eating something, right? Either through delivery or, going right through the fast food line, right? The drive-through. So it solved this optimization problem. The second optimization problem that it solved, it's how do we make food that's extremely cheap, okay, and very easy to prepare? It solves this problem pretty easily. Fast food, as you know, for the producer as well as the consumer, is a volume-based approach, and it's high in calories, and it's very cheap, right? So you can go through, get it pretty quickly, and it's also extremely cheap and affordable for people. The third optimization problem is, how do we make something that tastes good? Okay? It definitely solves that problem. If you've ever had Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, this food tastes great. It's out a result of, essentially us and the DNA that we've instilled around food and energy. Just being able to get high calorie, highly palatable foods quickly. Back when our ancestors were around, we didn't have that luxury. So the body creates these mechanisms in which, when we can't eat, we want to get in as many high calorie foods as possible because we didn't know when we were going to eat again, right? Now, that's not the case. We can eat pretty much anytime we want, and we can have access to food anytime we want, which is why the standard American diet has led to obesity and, essentially being ranked the number 10 or worst diet on my list. Okay, so it's a perfect solution for time, for cost effectiveness, and making something really good. But it also did one other thing. It's a killing machine. The standard American diet is the reason that has led to the epidemic of obesity, right? Not pandemic, but epidemic of obesity, weight gain. It's why these rates are continuing to rise. Okay? Doesn't mean that these foods like McDonald's, Chick-fil-A are quote unquote should be labeled as bad. They should be labeled as high calorie, and they should be consumed in moderation. Okay? Unfortunately, if you're under the standard American diet, there is no moderation concern with that, and that's why I ranked it as the number 10 worst diet. Okay? On to number 9, okay, where 1 would be the best diet I think people should try to think about following, and 10 being the worst. Here's number 9, a cleanse diet. So a cleanse diet, I guess, is sort of defined as this typical detox diet, involves a period of fasting, followed by strict diet of fruits, vegetables, juices, water, could include herbs and teas and colon cleanses or enemas, all this stuff, right? So it does have a benefit. It's getting people to eat fruits and vegetables in juice form that provides potentially a lot of fiber. A lot of people don't get enough fiber, right? And it also can be good because it has a limited time and effort associated with it, right? You're basically making the same thing, so there's less thinking involved. You don't have to really even try to be able to follow a diet like this. Maybe that's why it's so attractive to people. Okay? A lot of downsides, though, which is why it's ranked number 9. So it's one of the most restrictive, right? There are like a set number of things you can eat. There's not a lot of protein involved. A lot of other macronutrients as well as micronutrient density is missing because it's so restrictive. It lacks scientific support. So the idea of going through a week or 2-week cleanse and being able to come out of that more healthy and in a position to support weight loss goals, is the science just isn't out there, right? And there are also a lot of safety concerns with doing a diet like this because of the hyponutremic nature of it and not being able to get in the food requirements that are necessary outside of whatever cleanse, quote unquote, definition / diet that you're following, right? So they're ineffective for long-term weight loss, period. Many people will try these diets at the beginning of the year and just no scientific evidence to support it, right? You don't really need anything to cleanse your body. You have a liver, you have kidneys that do that for you. Even our skin naturally gets rid of toxins. So you're buying these expensive bottled juices, supplements, and things like that, basically, and it's totally unnecessary, right? So hopefully people that are thinking about trying a diet like this will hear this podcast so that they inevitably don't and maybe go to one of the other options that I'll get into, which I believe are better, albeit maybe not optimal. So the third worst diet, number 8 on our list, is the keto diet. So the keto diet is a diet essentially following the macronutrient distribution of around 75 to 80% fat, 20% protein, and 5% carbohydrates. Okay? So it's a low carb, high fat diet, lowers blood sugar, insulin levels, shifts the body's metabolism away from using carbohydrates or a mixture of a variety of substrates to only using fat and basically utilizing ketones. That's why it's called the ketogenic diet, from those fats, right? So the first thing that really comes to mind in terms of a benefit is that this diet sort of came out of studies around neurological diseases. So it can help people specifically that are having seizures and other neurological symptoms. I would say that's probably the only benefit of it. It has a lot of restrictions in terms of carbohydrate count. You can't also go over the protein count or you could be kicked out of ketosis. So that's not really advantageous for anyone. And in terms of blue zones, so blue zones are areas around the world where people tend to live the longest and their diets have been studied. And it's been shown that actually in some blue zones that it's the exact opposite of that, of the keto diet. People are eating lots of fruits and vegetables and things like that. So those aren't really able to be consumed under the keto diet because those higher carbohydrate amounts will kick you out of ketosis, right? So the strict keto diet, for all intents and purposes, is not really something that we find sustainable. And now you can kind of start seeing the trend, right? So the number 10 diet, the standard American diet, was the most flexible. Extreme flexibility, eat, do, buy, shovel in your mouth, whatever you want, from wherever you want. And then it gets, boom, number 9 is like the most restrictive. Now we have a little bit less restrictive with the keto diet. And as you get to this really, really restrictive approach with dieting, whether it be timing, food composition, macronutrient distribution, it becomes not sustainable for most people. Like, we can't ignore the fact that there are other foods and things out there for us that are available. And this makes it really, too restrictive, not sustainable. And that's really the downside of the keto diet. Also doesn't say how much to eat, right? So we know when it comes down to the calorie, right? Calories in versus calories out will tell us whether we're gaining weight in terms of muscle mass or losing weight in terms of body fat. So if this doesn't give you any guidelines in terms of the number of macros, you could be on a keto diet and over-consuming calories and actually be gaining weight, right? A lot of people will lose weight initially on the keto diet, and that's because carbohydrate restriction causes less glycogen storage. Glycogen is basically the carbohydrates we store in our muscle. And glycogen, which is the carbohydrate stored in a muscle, also stores 3 times the amount of water per gram of glycogen. So a lot of people will see, boom, an initial drop in weight, and it's typically the glycogen being depleted as well as the water weight that it's holding on to. So if you end up trying this, I don't know why you would after hearing this, that's something to be mindful of, And people can also become hyponatremic on this diet. So it makes it more difficult to get things like magnesium, vitamin C, calcium, right? So I would say that that's another reason to not sort of try your hand at this diet. Okay, number 7 here is the carnivore diet. So basically going carnivore is eating a lot of meat, animal products, excludes all other food sources such as grains, legumes, nuts, veggies, fruits. And it pretty much lowers the carb count down to 0, similar to that of the keto diet, right? And its benefits is that it's really high in protein, which is great. Okay, that's great for building muscle mass. It's especially great for older folks to preserve muscle mass, bone density, and can potentially help with some inflammation. But that could be likely due to the elimination of some foods that people had a sensitivity to, particularly, or didn't digest well. Not necessarily the fact that the carnivore diet is providing an anti-inflammatory effect, right? So again, the blue zones are the opposite. This is where people live extremely long. It doesn't tell you how much, right? So you could be in a caloric surplus and gaining weight on the carnivore diet because it doesn't tell you how much to eat. It just kind of gives you guidelines of what foods are off limits, also making it not flexible. Little to no carbs and fiber, and it's still missing out on a variety of micronutrients and vitamins. Also, another thing here is ammonia. So ammonia is a neurotoxin, and it will pool in the body when eating large amounts of protein, especially from animal products. So this can cause a variety of different health problems over time. So this is potentially, one side effect of it, depending on how well you clear out ammonia from the body, right? So that's the carnivore diet. Vegan. Vegan is plant-based foods only, so it's not that you cannot be a vegetarian or a vegan and have success. A lot of people have had success. It is restrictive in the fact you cannot have animal products, okay? Which is why it's 5th on the list. So this is where we start to get to, okay, these diets actually aren't too bad. They could be sustained long-term, okay? This is where we start to make that pivot. Okay, I find it very far and few between that someone could follow aforementioned diets before we got to vegan for a long period of time. I know some people that have done carnivore for a long period of time, also keto, but it's less likely, and it requires a lot more navigating of your lifestyle and understanding the food requirements and micronutrients needed and from which foods you're going to get them from to sustain long term. Okay, but the vegan diet, a lot of people have had a lot of success with it, but it does have its advantages and disadvantages, right? So it's more flexible than some of the other diets that we mentioned, which is great. People in blue zones tend to eat a lot of the same foods that vegans do in terms of vegetable content. And the downside really is that it's missing out on key vitamins and micronutrients. It's not that you can't get them with this diet. You just have to be very well educated. And my recommendation would be to work with a coach if you're looking to make the transition from an animal-based diet or a diet where you're eating animal-based products to something like veganism, okay? So it's missing out on micronutrients such as iron and B12, since a lot of those micronutrients and vitamins are coming from meat, right? So it's not that you can't get them. You may have to supplement with them and get them from other sources, and it's definitely possible to do so. So that's really some of the downsides of this diet specifically. It can be difficult for some people to get enough protein on this diet as well. There are some ways in terms of tofu, nutritional yeast, seitan, and some other things that you can collagen protein for vegetarians and other things like that you can utilize to potentially get in the requirement for protein that is used to facilitate, preserve muscle mass, and possibly even put on muscle mass. But as mentioned, it's possible to do so. My recommendation is to work with a coach to make this transition as smooth as possible, right? The next diet is Whole30/Paleo. And I group these together because they're not mutually exclusive, but they're fairly similar, right? So the Whole30 is in the name, right? It says Whole30. So it only wants you to follow the diet for 30 days. I laugh when I see this name and then people are like, I'm doing Whole30. And it's like, so you're planning to follow for 30 days, right? They're like, no. I'm like, what do you mean? It's in the name. Like, it's only designed to be followed for 30 days, right? Because the people who design it know that they want you to go back to some other lifestyle afterwards because they know that they wouldn't follow it themselves forever. It is restrictive in the fact that you have to eliminate sugar, alcohol, grains, legumes, soy, and dairy, which is not necessary for most people. Some of those things could be implemented in the diet in moderation, and people could experience more flexibility and reach their goals the same way, right? But it's still, not as restrictive as some of the other diets, even in my opinion, as restrictive as veganism, okay? So I would say that overall, a lot of people have had success, and I've talked to a lot of folks that are like, hey, I want to work with you guys. I've been Whole30 or Paleo for about 10 years. I'm like, wow, it's really great. For some people that don't have that mindset around food where they can include things in moderation, it could be good for them, right? And they can follow for an extended period of time, reach their goals. But just know, like, it's kind of in the name here, Whole30. There are other things like legumes, grains, soy, and even sugar in moderation is good, right? Especially post-workout or post-training session, depending on where you're at in your athletic career. So the big downside is that it's still an elimination diet, right? It does have a fairly good balance of macros, vitamins, minerals, micronutrients, right? But it's still an elimination diet. There are a lot of things that are eliminated from it. Number 4 is intermittent fasting, okay? So here's what's cool about intermittent fasting. It does have its downsides, but I do believe that it's better than the aforementioned diets. It's fairly flexible in terms of the food composition. So what you choose to eat, all the other diets that we've sort of mentioned, it's kind of been this, okay, I need to eliminate this from my diet completely. Intermittent fasting doesn't work that way. Intermittent fasting is restrictive, not in food composition, but in the time essentially that you can eat. So a lot of people do a 16-8 split, which is not eating for 16 hours. That would be, you not eating after dinner time and then not eating till 12 the next day. For example, some people go through time-restricted feeding windows where they don't eat for 24 hours and only water fast. So you can eat even the standard American diet on intermittent fasting. And some people have had success losing weight because it's difficult to get in the energy requirements needed to gain weight, right? In a time frame of only 8 hours of eating, especially when you're used to eating 12 to 14 hours throughout the day. So some people have had success with this. There are some other potential benefits of it that have been studied in terms of clearing DNA damage and stuff like that. I would say overall, though, I would only even think about taking an approach like this if I had some severe medical issues potentially. And I'm not a doctor, so I'm not prescribing that. If you have severe medical issues, you need to, involve yourself in intermittent fasting. We have used it for some folks that have extremely busy schedules and legitimately can't put in the time and effort to be able to eat in the morning, but we need them to get a certain energy requirement in. This is one way to do so. The downsides, it needs to be monitored. Like you can't just roll through an intermittent fasting approach or even a time restricted feeding approach, which is worse, which is 24 to 48 hour only water fast. There are a lot of detriments to that, obviously, specifically dehydration. That can be dangerous, right? If you are in an intermittent fasting approach and you're losing weight, you might be losing weight extremely quickly because you're not eating for a big portion of the day. So you may be losing weight too quickly. And when you do this, it could cause the loss of muscle mass and some metabolic damage, whereas you can't get your metabolic rate up again to potentially lose weight. So I think that these are some things that you need to look out for. It's a weird paradox because it can cause you to undereat some folks because they don't have that time to eat. Then it can also cause people to overeat as well, right? You haven't eaten all day, you're just ravenous and you eat everything and you get in your calorie allotment plus times 2 in the 8 hours, So just be on the lookout for something like this. There are a lot of people that support this diet, very well-educated doctors and scientists, but it's specific for specific types of people. And for the weight loss community, I don't think that it's anywhere near the best approach in terms of weight loss and sustainability long-term, all right? Number 3, the Mediterranean diet. So I would say this diet is number 1. Let me explain it first. So it's basically a daily consumption of vegetables, fruits, whole grains, healthy fats, with a weekly intake of fish, poultry, beans, and eggs, moderate portions of dairy products, limited intake of red meat. So you could see that it's not eliminate all this stuff, right? It's more of a moderation-based approach and get in plenty of this stuff also, right? Which makes it inherently a lot more flexible than some of the diets mentioned prior, okay? So it is very flexible, it's balanced, can be used for weight management, and it is similar to some of those blue zones that I talked about earlier where people's life expectancy is higher than other parts of the world. A lot of those people, when their diets were analyzed, are eating a Mediterranean or similar diet, okay? Vegetables, fruits, whole grains, healthy fats, intake of fish, poultry, beans, and eggs with moderate portions of dairy, limited intake of red meat. So fairly flexible, I would say. And it's fairly easy for a coach like us over at CBG or elsewhere to design macros for you for something like this, getting you eat the right portion sizes so that you can reach whatever your goals might be. So Mediterranean diet, I would say that is something that is sustainable long-term for a lot of people. Definitely worth looking into. The second best diet is macros or intuitive eating. Okay, so macros is essentially a system. If it fits your macros is the popular buzz phrase out there. Or intuitive eating, where you learn how to eat different portion sizes and things. Both of these are they're not really diets, they're more skills, in my opinion, to reach some of the goals and then be able to subconsciously use those skills to sustain your weight loss or potentially even reach other goals, okay? So there is a certain set amount of food, moderation, based on the calorie requirements that you need to reach your goals, right? This is the first thing you should be thinking about in regards to weight loss, performance, wellness, because the calorie is, based on the second law of thermodynamics, is going to be able to, it pivots our weight in either direction. If we're over-consuming more than we're expending, we're going to gain weight. If we're under-consuming and we're expending more, we're going to lose weight, right? This is a flexible diet because there are a wide variety of food options with macros, if it fits your macros, that you can be following. People end up making better and healthier choices with this overall so that they can get in the food requirements, micronutrients, vitamins, minerals they need to reach their goals. Both are developed for people to last long term. I think it can be a challenge for some people to track for so long. So that's why I said that these are skills. And once you build these skills, you need to find a sustainable approach beyond this. But it will allow you to have all of the food that the world offers, right? Which is great. Even the standard American diet, like McDonald's and other things like that. Like I said, most people make better decisions based on those since they're following a diet like this, just so they can feel satisfied, satiated, and not hungry to get to their calorie requirements. But it's very flexible. And you just don't want to follow macros, for example, for an extended period of time where you receive burnout. It's really great to start to understand what your portion sizes of your meals are, how to navigate maybe without calculating, tracking, measuring, weighing at some point, right? Once you've been following for a while. So use these skills, build these skills. This is definitely a good approach and something that people could follow long term. The last approach here is a customized approach with working with a coach. And a lot of coaches have different ways of customization. At CBG, we obviously use all of the metrics that we know of from you, your previous dieting experiences, what time you wake up, what time you go to sleep, what time you work out and train. All these things can be used and tailored towards you. We also have other DNA options as well. These DNA options, they're based on your genotypes, single nucleotide polymorphisms that can get a lot more specific on a molecular level to what it is in the foods that you should be using to fuel yourself or to lose weight or to gain muscle mass, right? It's a pretty exciting emerging field of nutrigenomics. But there are a lot of different ways to customize diets based on, preferences and other things. And, some people, for example, the 5th ranked diet here was veganism, and a coach can customize a vegan-based diet for you that hits all of those micronutrient requirements and things you need to sustain long-term, right? It's a lot more difficult to navigate something like that on your own, especially if you're transitioning from, a diet where you're eating a lot of animal products, okay? So there are a lot of benefits. I don't really see any downsides of working with a coach. To be honest, maybe some people will say the downside is that it costs money and that it can be expensive. But look, if a coach helps you lose 20 pounds and you keep it off, that could be putting 5 years on your life. How much money do you make in 5 years? A lot more than you're paying a nutrition coach to work with you for 6, 7, 8 months, right? So when people say it's an investment, that's why it's an investment. And it's very possible that you could navigate your nutrition on your own and get to your weight loss goal and sustain it. I believe in you guys. You could do it, right? But how long is it going to take you to get there? Is it going to take you 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? Right? How long is it going to take you for you to look through the scientific literature, figure out what's best and optimal, and disseminating through all of the information that's out there in this $72 billion fitness industry where people just come in and think that they can be a nutrition coach? It's better to hire a coach that you trust, someone that's going to help you. They're going to catalyze the process for you to reach your goals quicker, right? That's the reason that you really hire a nutrition coach. And someone that can teach you to be your own nutrition coach so that you don't have to continue to hire a new nutrition coach every year or sign up for the next nutrition gym challenge or whatever it is. You learn principles and stuff from coaches so that you can be your own nutrition coach. Doesn't mean you can go off and be a nutrition coach for hundreds of people, but you could be your own nutrition coach, right? So there are a lot of benefits like that of working with a coach. You are unique and your coach knows that, and they want to put structure in place based on your uniqueness to help you reach your goals. And those pivots and adjustments will help you reach your goals faster, provide accountability, provide meal planning, how much, when, what to eat. They can navigate this with you. It can help drastically improve your relationship with food. There's progress tracking with this that helps coaches and yourself understand what it is that you're doing right and what it is that you need to improve on. They bring expertise and they bring education, and eventually, on a consistent basis, can bring you the results that you're really looking for, right? And like I said, the one downside is it costs money. It's going to cost you some money. That's just the way that it works, but you'll get your money back 50 times. If you can become your own nutrition coach and keep the body fat off or put on the muscle mass that you want that inevitably is so hard to gain as you get older. Past the age of 40, we drastically start to decrease in terms of muscle mass. You want to try to put on as much muscle mass before that time as possible, right? Coaches can help you do that. So, yeah, guys. So that's the podcast, the 10 worst diets. Look, don't come at me talking about, oh, you flipped up number 4 and 5. It should be vegans better than intermittent fasting. Look. I've made it pretty clear here what I think the most sustainable diets are. All of these diets can potentially be sustainable for people, probably besides the SAD and cleanse. Like even if you wanted to, follow keto, I know people that have done it and they're sustainable with it and have great success with it. just know that you're going to have to make some sacrifices on flexibility to do so. So that's the podcast today, guys. This is essentially going to be the shorter version of the podcast, our micro podcast. If you want the full episode, it comes out on Thursday. So look, give it a listen, give it a like, subscribe. We'd love to hear from you guys. And yep, we'll talk to you soon. Peace. It's science. Thank you for listening to the podcast today. We hope you enjoyed it. Keep tuning in every week for more incredible guests and ways to reach your max potential, both physically and mentally. Please subscribe on iTunes or your preferred podcast app and let us know if you like this episode. Don't forget to check us out at consistencybreedsgrowth.com or on Instagram at CBG_online_sports for details on upcoming nutrition challenges or one-on-one coaching for weight loss, wellness, or performance. Also, feel free to join our free Facebook page at www.facebook.com/groups/CBG Nutrition Tribe.